Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you are new around here, welcome. So glad to have you. And for those that have been listening for a while, thank you so much. It is so nice to have you back. Now, I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but while I'm recording this, it is summertime, which means lots of get-togethers with friends and family and the perfect time to bring out some great bottles of wine. Now, I've come to realize that a lot of things that I think about when serving a bottle of wine, I'm just kind of used to it now. It just comes as second nature. It's kind of like the norm. But I know that I didn't always know these things. So I figured I'd share with you all the things that I've learned along the way about serving wine. So we're going to talk about everything from what type of wine glasses to use and why I use those types of wine glasses, why you don't fill an entire wine glass with wine when you're pouring. We'll also talk about what order do you serve the wines in and how many bottles should I buy for a party or for dinner. We'll talk a little bit about what temperature to serve wine at. And then we will finish up. I will do a little intro into decanting wine, though I'm going to save like the full in-depth what to do, how to do it, all of that for a different episode, because I feel like we could talk about that this entire time and fill up half an hour. So we'll just do a little kind of brief intro, and then we'll finish everything off with how to preserve your wine afterwards, because let me give you a little preview here. You don't have to throw your wine away if you don't drink all of it, okay? That wine lasts longer than a day, I promise. So let's start at the beginning and start talking about wine glasses. So I feel like this is a very touchy subject for some things. So first, talking about what type of wine glass. Now, I once read in a book, and I do believe it's Wine Folly. I absolutely love that book. But they said the only good use for a stemless wine glass is a water cup. I definitely got a good laugh over this. And admittedly, I myself do prefer a stemmed wine glass. So we're talking about if you're like, what the heck, stem versus stemless. It's basically the difference between like if it has like if it's a wine glass that just kind of looks like a regular glass and just sits on the table and it's just like the bowl part of it, you know, the part that like kind of looks like if you hold your hand up and you were like holding something, that's the bowl, right? Versus like if it has a stem on it, almost like think about the stem of a flower, that would be your stemmed wine glass. So there are a couple of reasons that I prefer a stemmed wine glass. So I would say they're both like one of them is practical and then one of them is just pure aesthetics. So first, I like having a stem because I hold my wine glass by the stem. And you may have seen this definitely on social media. This would be a place, or potentially if you are at a place with someone a little pretentious and they may have chided you for holding your wine glass by the bowl rather than the stem. There is actually a practical reason for holding your wine glass that way. So it's not just us wine snobs being like, no, you hold it like this with your pinky out. No, I promise there is actually a reason for that. You hold it by the stem to prevent the wine from getting warm from your hand. Because here's the thing, if you're serving the wine at the right temperature, and stick around, I'll tell you more about that, your wine is like 99% of the time going to be cooler than the temperature of your hand, unless you just like stuck your hand in some ice water or something. So if you hold the wine glass by the bowl, which is where the wine sits, you are going to warm it up. And we don't want to do that. So we hold it by the stem. The other like fancier reason as well is like the bowl of the glass, you typically want to keep that very clean and you don't want any of those fingerprints all over the bowl. So you would hold it by the stem for that reason as well. And like I said, just aesthetically, I do like the look of a stemmed glass. And I feel like it adds just like a little something fancy, which honestly, even if I'm just drinking wine on a Tuesday night, it's kind of nice to feel a little fancy. Honestly, sometimes I will also pour my like LaCroix or other sparkling water or just have some ice water in a wine glass if I'm feeling like I need a little, like, just a little fun fanciness to my day. All that said, I do, encourage you to drink out of whatever glass you prefer. A lot of people prefer a stemless wine glass just because they don't break as easily or spill as easily. Totally understand that. And there's a time and a place for both. If I'm outside drinking with friends, I might lean towards that, outdoor style stemless wine glass over a glass, a much more likely to break stemmed wine glass. Last thing when talking about wine glasses or styles is that you'll also notice that even just if we get away from the stemmed versus stemless, you'll notice that wine glasses come in many different sizes and even different shapes, right? There's like your typical wine glass where it's got a wide bowl, or somewhat wide bowl at the bottom, and then it tapers in at the top, right? But then there are some that kind of taper in and then go back out. And we call those a tulip style where they've got kind of like the little lip on the outside. And then there's ones that differ in between like how big, is that bowl at the bottom and then how much does it taper or go inwards towards the top. So just in general, I'm just going to give you kind of some basics here. The larger the bowl, so the larger the bottom of the wine glass, the more the wine is in contact with oxygen. This typically causes a wine to what we call open up, or basically just give off more aroma. The more it's in contact with oxygen, the more aroma will come from that wine, or the more like variation of aroma, I should say. Generally, more aromatic wines tend to go in larger, bold wine glasses. Also, just like the bigger and bolder a wine is, the more you're going to want to go with one of those like big, as big as your head type wine glasses. So, especially wines from Burgundy are known to go in here. So, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but also Nebbiolo. Interestingly enough, though, Cabernet is like always one that I think of as being like a big, bold wine, not always put in a larger bowl. The big ass large bowl wine glasses. See, a smaller bowl, so if you have something, a little bit smaller wine glass, it concentrates the aroma and makes it more direct. So a smaller wine glass prevents the aroma from being diluted by a larger volume. So this is why you don't see kind of the lighter white wines being served in those big glasses, because we don't want to overwhelm it and like dissipate all of that lovely aroma that's in there. That smaller wine glass will typically highlight one key aroma and like concentrate it like directly to your nose, whereas the larger bowl expresses all the different aromas. I kind of think about it with like, I'm such a like software engineer nerd when I'm thinking like depth first versus breadth first search. But if you think about it, it's like the smaller wine glass is like the depth of the aroma. So you're going to get one or two key aromas, but you're going to get them really strongly. It's going in very deep versus a larger bold wine glass is going to have it's going to give you the breadth of aroma, meaning you're going to get more of a lot of different aromas, but not super deep or intense of each of those aromas. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. It's actually really interesting. I highly recommend giving this a try if you happen to have both a smaller and a larger wine glass. I think a lot of people in the wine world call them like a white wine versus a red wine glass, but you can easily use them for both. And I don't think you should just have them for, white wine versus red. But if you have a smaller and you have a larger wine glass, try the same wine in both of them and see what happens. We did this a couple years ago on my first Walla Walla wine retreat. We were at Long Shadows and they had us do this with Riesling, which you would never think to put Riesling in a large wine glass, right? But it was really fascinating. Riesling is known for having a lot of aromatics, so it's not crazy to do that. So when we put it in the small wine glass, it was a very concentrated, specific aroma that we could all kind of pull out. And it was very intense, but it was just that. Versus when we put it in the larger wine glass, it was like, oh, wow, you also get this and this and this, but they're not as strong. And so what was also fascinating here was I think there were like 10, were there 10 or 11 of us on the trip? Each of us had a different preference for which one, whether we like the small or the large wine glass. And so neither of us was wrong. It just depended on how we preferred to enjoy the wine. So definitely experiment with the size of your wine glass. But I will also say, like, if you'd rather just have like one type of wine glass in your house for all wines, you can definitely do that. You do not need a wine glass for, a Riesling one and then a Cabernet Sauvignon and then a this and a that. Honestly, if you want to be like somewhere a happy medium, just get yourself a smaller bowl, a wine glass with a smaller bowl, so smaller, more direct, and then get one that has a larger bowl, that part at the bottom of the glass, and then just have those two, and then you can kind of experiment and see what you like. Just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, what are you waiting for? I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, and so much more. Now, let's get back to the show. Oh, I did have one more thing on the wine glass. I mentioned this in the intro earlier. One thing that, like, again, I've gotten very used to, but I realize this is not always a thing. And I've noticed this most because I've been rewatching The Big Bang Theory. Not rewatching. I've actually never seen the show before, but I'm saying rewatching because like so many other people have watched it, I guess. But I'm watching The Big Bang Theory on HBO Max right now. And they eat and drink a lot in the show, and wine shows up a lot. And even at the fanciest of restaurants, they have wine glasses, but they are poured like 3/4 of the way up with wine. And that is not a thing that you do when you drink wine or when you're, into wine. The thing is, you don't fill the glass all the way up, and you really don't even fill it half of the way up. A typical wine pour in a restaurant is about 5 to 6 ounces, and most of the wine glasses can fit, gosh, I don't know, they could almost fit a whole bottle. I bet a lot of wine glasses could. You'd be surprised, like all the way up to the top, but they're probably closer to like 15 to 20 ounces, maybe. But the reason we don't fill a wine glass all the way is you want room to swirl the wine. We want to be able to get in contact with oxygen, have some movement going, and you want to be able to smell. The reason that a wine glass, like most wine glasses, are bigger at the bottom and then get smaller at the top is that they want the wine to be able to come in contact with oxygen at the bottom of the glass, but they also want to be able to trap those aromas that come in. So by having that kind of curve inward, it causes the aromas to come up from the wine, but then stay within the wine glass. So you need room in your wine glass to be able to get those smells. So just keep that in mind. I'll usually pour until like, if I'm just at home, I'm not always going for a full glass of wine. So I'll usually pour to about where like the biggest spot on the wine glass. That's probably more of a tasting 3 ounce, 4 ounce pour. So if you want to go for a full glass, just go a little bit more than the biggest part of the wine glass. And that's usually a good place to stop. All right, so you're having some people over, whether it's a party or a dinner, and you want to know how many bottles of wine. I was just asked this. I'm working as a sommelier in a big corporate event, and they're like, "All right, we got 160 people. How many wines should we buy?" And I was like, "Oh, damn. All right, let's talk about this." I'm sure there are some more specific rules for folks that have worked in the restaurant world and have a better idea of this. My go-to is I always start off with the simple 2 people per bottle rule. I kind of go off of the same thing as like, if you're going to go out to dinner with you and a friend or you and your partner, if me and Mr. Cork and Fizz go out, we can order a bottle of wine for the 2 of us to share. And that'll be plenty. We would both be happy with just drinking that. And then if we go with another couple friends, right, we go on a double date, we're going to order 2 bottles of wine, right? So I just kind of think about 2 people per bottle rule. So if you're going to be having 10 people drinking wine at your dinner or party, you would want to get at least 5 bottles of wine. Of course, you're going to want to adjust this based on the number of people who are drinking and then who's drinking. If you know somebody who, tends to have 4 to 5 glasses of wine across the night, you might want to get a few more, especially like how long as well. This is another thing that I'm sure you can take into account. How long is your dinner or party? A typical night at a restaurant, we're going to spend an hour, hour and a half there. So just drinking that one bottle makes sense. But if you're having a party that's 5 hours long, you might want to go a little bit more. Also depends if you're serving anything else. But like I said, I like to kind of start with that 2 people per bottle rule and then expand from there. Now, if you're doing a sort of wine tasting or having a dinner and you're kind of wondering, okay, I have a lot of different styles of wine. I've got sparkling, white, red, sweet, rosé, whatnot. What order should I serve the wines in? It's a great question. There is like a general guideline, but you don't always have to follow this. And it always kind of depends because, like, if you're having it with dinner, you want to pair it with the food more than you want to like have it go in this order. But if you're doing just like a wine tasting, then this is a good order to follow. So the general guideline is serving, you want to start with your sparkling wine, then you're going to go into your white wine, red wine, and finish with the sweet wine. Another general guideline is to serve lightest body to fullest body. So remember, body is the weight of the wine in your mouth. How heavy does it feel? So your lighter wines, like a Sauvignon Blanc, or when it comes to reds, it's going to be like a Pinot Noir or a Gamay, versus your fullest bodied wine is going to be that big, rich, coats your mouth kind of wine. If you're like, I have no idea what the body of the wine is, just looking at the bottle, that's fair. They don't really put that on the label, but you can use the alcohol level to guide you. Typically, lower alcohol levels equal a lighter bodied wine versus higher alcohol levels equal a full bodied wine. Whenever we have wine night with my friends, if you know the story, how I got into wine, one of the ways was that I started a wine club with friends back in, gosh, when was this? Probably like 2018. And I have always done this with our wines whenever we taste them. Everybody brings a bottle and we taste throughout the night. And so I've always done this where I've kind of ordered them primarily whites to reds. And then we don't usually have sweet wines. But if we did, we put them at the end. And then, of course, like rosé I typically put them between the white and the red. They kind of fit there. Orange also kind of falls into that category. And then I look at the alcohol level. And so I will kind of order them based off, white, rosé, orange, red, sweet. And then within that, like we have 3 white wines, we're going to do the lowest alcohol first up to the highest alcohol. There are a couple of reasons why you do this. So first, if you do have any sweet wine that you're planning on having, you want to have the sweet wine after everything else, because what happens is that sweet wine will make the non-sweet wines taste very blah. I can't think of a better way to describe it, but like just very dull. You're not going to get as much of the fruitiness because that sugar in the sweet wine is going to overwhelm any like sweet taste in the non-sweet wine, if that makes sense. Like any like flavors that come across as sweet. If you've ever done this before, I know my mom used to be a big sweet wine drinker, and she'd be drinking her Moscato and then I'd give her a sip of my wine. Well, she was just bound determined to not like my wine because, first of all, it didn't have any sugar in it, and she'd just been drinking a sweet wine. So then she goes to my wine and it's just going to taste acidic and bitter, and we don't want that. So typically you want to save your sweet wine after everything else, or make sure to put like some food in between so you can kind of refresh your palate. The other reason that we do the whole like full-bodied wines after the lighter bodied wines is because those fuller body wines can overwhelm. This is something that I think comes up, and it's actually a thought of mine. I've never judged for like a large wine tasting, but I think this is sometimes a reason why really full-bodied, big, rich wines can get a higher score, when you're judging lots of wines at once versus those lighter ones, because those lighter ones are still good in their own way. They don't stand out next to the fuller bodied wines. So I think it's always good to start with that lighter bodied and then go into the fuller bodied. All right, let's talk about the temperature of wine. Because here's the deal. I bet you many of us are serving our white wines too cold and our red wines too warm. This podcast is sponsored by Repour Wine Savers. Listen, I love wine, but that doesn't mean I want to drink a full bottle every night. You see, it's always a risk opening a bottle knowing I'll only have a glass or two. But now I don't worry about that at all because I have Repour. These little contraptions will keep your open bottles of wine good for up to 3 months by removing oxygen from the bottle using fancy chemistry. And they're so easy to use. I simply open a bottle of wine, cork or screw cap, just like normal, and enjoy my glass or two. Then, when I'm ready to call it a night, I rip the foil off my Repour wine saver and place it in the bottle in place of the cork or screw cap, and then stick the bottle in the fridge. Simple as that. Then, whenever I grab another glass from that bottle in the future, I just make sure to put the Repour back on as soon as I'm done pouring. It's that easy. Want to give Repour a try? Head to repour.com, repour.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ for 10% off your order. That's Repour, repour.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ. No spaces in that, and the and is spelt out, so it's CORKANDFIZZ. Once you have Repour, you'll never have to worry about opening a bottle of wine just for one glass. I mean, heck, now you can try 2 or more wines at the same time and have your own at-home wine tasting. This podcast is sponsored by the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club. Interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you love the idea of tasting wine live with me. If that's you, come join my Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club, and you'll get to sip wine with me twice a month while I help you find new favorite wines. The Cork Crew is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. And the best part about this club, purchasing the wine is completely optional. Plus, all events are recorded, and you have access to the full library of recordings as a Cork Crew member, so you can always catch up if you can't make it live. Oh, and did I mention it's virtual, which means you get to do all of this from the comfort of your sofa in your PJs. No need to worry about driving in crappy traffic, finding a designated driver, or spending an arm and a leg on a taxi. Want to give it a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Tasting Club. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for anything. You'll be my guest. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass and be one step closer to becoming a member of the best wine tasting club around, the Cork Crew. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the show. We want to find a happy medium. And I don't want to make this too complicated. So I'm going to go through kind of some just basic guidelines and like kind of give you like the order from like the coldest to the warmest, and then give you an idea on how to chill the wines and get them to the right temperature or warm them up. And then at the end here, I'll give you 2 quick tips for quickly chilling a bottle of wine when you're like, ah, crap, I forgot to put the rosé in the fridge. So starting from the wine that we want to serve the coldest, that's going to be sparkling wine. And honestly, most of the time you want to serve sparkling wine ice cold, unless it's a higher end champagne or other style of wine where you're trying to get some aromatics out of it. You really just want to put the sparkling wine in the fridge, at least for 24 hours, and then serve it right out of the fridge. Next up is going to be your lighter bodied wines. Remember, again, these are light. Think like Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc. You want these just above fridge temperature. So generally the way that I do this, I have them stored in the fridge I put them in the fridge for at least 24 hours and then take them out 15 to 30 minutes before I'm going to drink them. Just kind of depends on like what the temperature is that day. And of course, if it's in the middle of the summer, ice cold may be perfectly appropriate, and that is totally fine. Okay, so we had coldest with sparkling wine, then lighter bodied whites. Then we're going to get into our medium or fuller bodied white wines, things like Chardonnay, Roussanne, some fuller bodied Chenin Blancs, right? These are things that you can also, when you're shopping at a smaller wine shop, ask the person who's selling you the wine, where would you categorize this? Is this lighter, medium, or fuller bodied? And that kind of give you a hint as well. So you don't always have to figure this out. You can also look it up online and just say, what body is and put in your wine there. Again, remember, you can always look at the alcohol level too. If it's a lower alcohol level, it's usually lighter. Higher alcohol level, something above 13%, that's going to be a medium to fuller bodied. Okay, so we have sparkling, light-bodied whites, then medium to full-bodied whites, then your lighter-bodied reds. Your lighter-bodied reds are going to be, similar to the medium and full-bodied whites. You can store them in the fridge and then just take them out 30 to 60 minutes before you want to drink them. And then your medium to fuller-bodied reds, you don't want to drink these at room temperature unless your room is like 58 degrees, which I'm guessing that might be a little cold. Instead, with these, you can store them at room temperature, or cellar temperature is even better. Find a unfinished part of your basement. But what you want to do is stick them in the fridge for 15 to 30 minutes just to chill them down a little bit. Some outliers when it comes to orange wines, sweet wines, and rosés. Those three I all kind of treat like the medium-bodied whites, though sweet wines can get a little colder. Just depends on what type of sweet wine it is. But it's where I want to chill them, but I don't necessarily want them ice cold. When you're thinking about the temperature of your wine, here's something that is helpful to keep in mind. Cooling a wine down will temper the burn of alcohol, but it'll also potentially hide some of the aromas. So if you taste some wine, you're like, oh God, that's a lot of alcohol right now. Put it in the fridge for a little bit. But warming up a wine, on the other hand, can cause it to become more flavorful, but also more alcoholic and acidic. So if you have some wine, you take a sip and you go, I'm just like not getting anything from this. Let it sit out, 15, 20 minutes, come back to it and see if it has a little more flavor happening. Now, if you've got a full bottle that you were like, crap, this should have gone in the fridge yesterday, there are two techniques for chilling it down very quickly. The first and the most traditional is an ice bucket with water. So you're going to take a bucket that your wine bottle can fit in, and you're going to fill it with ice. You're also going to get some water in there. And then if you want to be even fancier, you can add some salt and then get your wine bottle in there chilling. You might even want to flip it half, like 10 minutes in, flip it if it doesn't like totally fit in the ice bucket with all the water. That should chill it really quickly. If you do not have a bucket or a lot of ice to do this with, you can also dampen a towel, either a regular towel or a paper towel. Just make sure it's like fully damp, but you don't want it like soaking wet, just like, wet all the way. And then wrap your wine bottle in that towel and put it in the freezer for like 15 to 20 minutes. And that should chill your wine pretty quickly for you. All right, we have made it to the section on decanting. I'm going to save most of my information on decanting for a full episode, but I wanted to cover the basics because I feel like this fits into the serving. Now, of course, if it's summertime, you're probably not serving as many wines that need decanting, but you can listen to this episode whenever. So I just want to give you some basics when it comes to why you might decant and how to do it. So first of all, decanting is simply pouring wine from the bottle into a separate vessel. Simple as that. And when we do that, we want to avoid disturbing any sediment at the bottom of the bottle. That's all decanting is. Yes, you can get a fancy glass decanter and get those fancy full sculpted ones that look like a pain in the ass to ever have to wash, but you don't need it. You don't need anything too fancy. I think the couple of decanters that I may have gotten off of Buy Nothing or like Facebook Marketplace because somebody's always selling a decanter or giving it away, honestly. You don't need anything fancy. So why do we decant? There are two reasons, and there are two distinct reasons for decanting. So first, if you have an older bottle of wine, there may be sediment at the bottom of this wine. And so the sediment, it's completely natural. It's not harmful in any way, but it usually doesn't taste good. It's usually formed from tannins in the wine. So again, this is most likely with a red wine. Tannins in the wine form chains, become too heavy, and they fall out of suspension in the liquid, and they become, little bits of sediment at the bottom of the bottle. Again, these aren't harmful. They're just unpleasant and a little bitter. So we decant to try to get all the liquid out of the bottle and then keep that sediment in the bottle. The second reason is if you have a young wine that needs a chance to breathe or open up. Basically, like I think of like decanting in this sense as like fast aging. Like you weren't able to wait 5 years to open the bottle. So you're like, well, we're going to go with the second best option and we're going to decant it. I mean, simply put, the wine has been like trapped inside a bottle with little to no oxygen, and it just needs a second to like spread its wings. It's like when you wake up in the morning and you just gotta like move everything, have all the little crickety cracks, give a big, oh, yeah. That's what your wine needs to do. Now, which wines need decanting? Again, it goes back to which reason, right? So, depending on which of our goals, if you are trying to get sediment out, you probably have an older bottle of wine. And when you have this, you want to make sure as well that before you decant it, you set it upright for a little bit, right? Because if you're storing your wine correctly, which we're going to talk about that in a later episode, you probably have the wine on its side. And so all the sediment is on the side of the bottle. And we don't want that when we're decanting. We want it at the bottom. So you're going to want to like, when I do this, if I'm ever serving an older bottle, that morning I will generally go down and get the bottle and like set it upright in my cellar that I say with air quotes. It's my laundry room, but you get the idea. Now, it's more common to decant for the second reason, which is the whole like needing to breathe. And so this is if it's a younger wine or a higher alcohol wine. It is more common to decant higher alcohol, aka fuller bodied red wines, but you can also decant lighter bodied reds and even white wines. One of the first white Burgundies, which is a Chardonnay from the Burgundy region of France, so it is a white wine. One of the first white Burgundies that I bought from a local wine shop, that shop owner told me to take the bottle, and I think his words were, dump it into a decanter real quick. And he demonstrated for me. He was opening a bottle for a tasting. And he's like, just take it and then just like whoop, put it right upside down and don't do it gently. Just like really go for it. And then just leave it in the decanter for like 15 to 20 minutes and you will have the perfect glass of white Burgundy. And he was right. It was great. It was wonderful. The only thing I haven't figured out yet, so anybody listening, if you've got an answer for this, what do I do if I still need to chill the wine that's in the decanter? Like, especially on hot summer days, like, do I put the full decanter in the fridge? Do I cover it? Do I put the wine back in the bottle? I honestly don't know. Okay, last question. How long do we decant the wine? So here's like your general guideline just to get you started. Fuller bodied and or highly tannic red wines, so think Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Malbec, Nebbiolo, you could go 1 to 2 hours. Just kind of keep testing the wine every 30 minutes and seeing where it's at. Medium bodied or medium tannic red wines, we're going to go Merlot, Sangiovese, Tempranillo. Give it like 30 to 60 minutes. Lighter bodied or low tannic red wines like Pinot Noir and Gamay probably only need about 20 to 30 minutes, if at all. Orange wines, it's going to depend on the wine, right? These have skin contact, so they have tannin. So if it's very young and very tannic, you're going to want to go longer versus, a little bit of age or not as tannic, you can have it earlier. But general guideline to start is 20 to 30 minutes. Medium to full-bodied white wines, 10 to 20 minutes. Lighter bodied white wines just don't really need decanting at all. So your Albariños, your Sauvignon Blancs, things like that don't need decanting. And then some sparkling wines you can decant for, a short 10 to 20 minutes. When it comes to decanting a sparkling wine, you typically only want to do it if the wine presents with some very unpleasant aromas, like, matchsticks or rotten eggs. It's from the sulfites that were put in the wine. So it's basically like the wine just needs to open up and those will dissipate if you let it kind of sit for a little bit, or if you're just not smelling anything at all. But just be warned, right? The longer you have it sit out, the sparkling wine, the fewer bubbles that you're going to get. So not as common. It's more going to be those red wines. So the fuller bodied high tannic reds, 1 to 2 hours, medium bodied 30 to 60 minutes, and the lighter or low tannic reds for 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, last thing I'm going to share with you before we end this episode is preserving the wine, or basically like just don't dump it down the sink if you're not going to finish it that day. Wine lasts longer than a day, but not usually longer than a week. So if you've got a bottle in there from a few weeks ago, from whatever that you're saving, not sure it's going to be any good. it anymore. A good rule of thumb that I use is 3 days. Some people may argue that, they could go up to 5, 6, 7. It very well could. And having a glass of wine from a bottle that's like gone bad or gone longer than it should have, most of the time is not bad for you in any way. It just doesn't taste good. So if you want, if you have a bottle that you didn't finish from, that night, go ahead and put the cork back in the bottle or close it up with the screw cap and just put it in the fridge. If it is a sparkling wine, you are going to need to do more than just a cork, because the thing is the bubbles that are in there will cause the cork to pop back out. That is why they have the cage on top of them. So you can buy a champagne stopper from Amazon for I'm pretty sure you can get them for under $5 right now. So just grab one of those. And what it does is it kind of clips onto the neck or the lips of the bottle so that it prevents it from coming up. But you can get one of those and then put the bottle in the fridge, even if it's a red wine. Those still go in the fridge. It'll help prevent the bottle from going bad quickly. If you do want the wine to last longer than those 3 to 5 days, check out one of my favorite wine products. It's called Repour, Repour, Repour Wine Savers. They work. They look just like a cork. You just peel foil off the bottom and stick them in the bottle. And those will help your wine last 2 to 3 months. And you use one Repour per bottle of wine. Pretty simple. All right, that is our little episode. Hopefully gave you lots of good tips about serving wine, those kind of things that I've learned along the way. Let me know, what other questions do you have about serving wine? Feel free to send me an email, haley@corkandfizz.com, or message me on Instagram @corkandfizz. I also believe there's a link somewhere in the show notes where you can send me a text message. I will get that text message and it is me responding to that text message. So feel free to use that functionality as well. If you know a wine lover in your life that would enjoy this podcast, please share it with them. Find your favorite episode and send it their way, or take a screenshot right now and post it on social media. It would mean the world to me. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I release new episodes every Wednesday. In next week's episode, I will be interviewing novelist Stephen Lane. Stephen has written multiple wine-themed thrillers, which I think are so cool. I'm in the middle of his last one right now, but he's got Root Cause, Dragonvine, and now Jupiter's Blood. I'll tell you more about the book during this interview. And though his books are fiction, Stephen is the real deal when it comes to wine. He is a French wine scholar, Italian wine scholar, Spanish wine scholar, and a Canadian wine scholar. This interview will be part book review, part learning about Stephen's experience in the wine world. So if you want to prepare, feel free to grab the book called Jupiter's Blood from your local bookstore or find it on Amazon. And don't worry, we're not going to give anything away during this interview, so you don't have to read it all in a week. I wouldn't do that to you. We're just going to probably give you a couple more little details or things to think about while you're reading it. And of course, if you are sick of drinking the same wine over and over, but you're afraid of grabbing a new bottle at the store because you have no idea what to expect, don't worry, you're not alone. I'm here to help. Come join my Cork Crew virtual tasting club to just gain confidence in your wine choices, try lots of new wines, and discover exactly what you like in a wine. You can come join the first tasting, whichever one you want, for free. Just head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get a free pass to join one of our upcoming tastings. Cheers!